Welcome to the Software People Stories. I'm Shiv.
I'm Chitra,
And I'm Gayatri.
We bring you interesting, untold stories of people.
associated with the creation
Or consumption of software-based solutions.
You'll hear stories of what worked.
and sometimes what didn't,
You will also hear very personal experiences.
and insights that would trigger your thoughts.
And inspire you to do even greater things.
Today, my guest is Shekhar Chandra, the Global Practice Head at Iris Software Inc. In this conversation, Shekhar talks about the transition from a technical role to sales and other points such as building a brand and the importance of practices and how one can and has to learn from failures and balancing the technical skills with salesmanship. Then we talk about the challenges faced by Indian companies trying to take their products global. So some of the key points are the importance of marketing and how one can consider different approaches to partnerships, about becoming an engineering partner, offering both core and non-core expertise, and becoming a provider of professional services, and how some of the challenges of going global can be addressed. Shekhar also shares his career advice for people in two different career stages. Usually I ask about people entering IT and midlife. This time I made it a little different because Shekhar also is now looking at what he wants to do next. So one category is about people who are facing the midlife career crisis, and some opportunities one could consider late career, or you may call it post-retirement. A very interesting conversation. Listen on. Yeah. Hi, Shekhar. Welcome to the Software People Stories.
All right. I'm glad to be here. I feel privileged actually that you invited me to share some of my stories. Let me see how far I can remember things.
Yeah, it's actually, I should say that, thank you for this, because knowing you for so many years, I'm sure you have a lot of stories, and I don't know if you can accommodate all of that in one episode. But
Right.
let's see how good, at least this can be a start.
Yes, indeed.
So we normally start with a self-introduction. So even though
Sure.
I've known you, it's probably best coming from your own mouth, where a couple of things. One is how did you get into IT? I mean, that is the start of this, their association with this. And if you also can share a little bit on your own career trajectory, then
Sure.
I will let my curiosity take over.
Okay. Yeah. So that's very simple. Getting into IT was by accident at the end of the day, because I'm really really old guy, right? So it was 1978. I was in IIT Kharagpur doing my master's in computer engineering, and I actually already had a couple of job offers in place. So it was just the allure to go to Calcutta, because Kharagpur it's a nice town, but there isn't much to do. So when you have the prospect of going to Calcutta and somebody's actually going to pay for it, great, right? So it was a good like a one-day affair, right? You go in the morning and then you come back late in the evening. So that's what it was. And Tata Burroughs was the company that I was interviewing for. There was absolutely nothing that you knew about it, because first of all, there was no internet, there was no such stuff available on newspapers to even understand what this company is about. All you see is an ad and you apply for it. And in this case, it wasn't even an ad because it was a campus interview. It's just that they were late in the game. Others had come in and already interviewed and made offers. So me and a couple of my colleagues just decided, hey, let's go to Cal and let's give this interview and let's spend some time there in the afternoon, evening, and head back. So that was it. We had no idea. Well, of course, we were studying computers, so I guess someday we would be working in that area. But again, what would you expect? A 22-year-old in that particular era to know much about anything at all, right? So we were not really exposed to many practical things, if you like. So, so that's how it was. It was accidental in that way, but it was a very pleasant accident because it's obviously given me a lifetime of experiences and a number of things that I could do with a number of colleagues, and I carry long memories of all my associations with them.
Yeah. So then, how did your career progress?
So, so the way the structure was early on is that you join in, and that again was probably unheard of in the industry itself. Is that Tata's gave an excellent grounding to everybody, So it was almost 3 months of training, right? I mean, who talks about giving 3 months of training to anybody, today, right? And even then, much less than even then, it was so. So there was 3 months of training on a number of different subjects. It's not like you're learning about computers, but you're learning about how to apply, right? So that's about the practical aspect of it. So there were some concepts, there were some things around, specific languages. There was something around, how to create groups and be able to tackle a specific business problem, stuff like that. So if you look back at it now, it was an excellent foundation. So we all went through that first, and then I mean during those days again, the whole style was essentially getting people trained and then sending them out on assignments to different projects, usually at customer sites, sometimes even within the development of a specific application for the company that brought you in. So since this was a joint venture, Burroughs was the American parent of this company, if you like, right? So you usually worked in either Burroughs offices or you worked at customer sites. So I happened to work, I would like to say almost exclusively only in Burroughs offices my entire early association in Tata Burroughs. So I was in Burroughs in Detroit. That was actually the headquarters. So that was the PPD, or the Program Products Division, I think it was called. So it was the PPD Detroit, then it was PPD Miami, and then I was in England at the what was an application center for the UK subsidiary, and that was in a place called Rodwell House, and that was it. And then I actually got into more on project management, and initially I got into like a design team for the Swift group as a part of a Tata team, and then I led a team later on in their development center in the US in Culpeper, Virginia. And then I moved into, it was interesting because our head of our division picked me up as somebody who had the potential to do some selling. So then I got into the sales side of things. So my actual technical experience is actually very less, but fortunately with the background that I had, I always kept in touch with technology, and that helped me on in the later years. So that was very important, right? So then came in the sales part after about 5.5, 6 years of technical work. It was into sales, and from then on, it was a lot of selling within Tata Burroughs. I worked for a total of about 11.5 years with Tata's, and then I moved on to joining a company in the US. They sent me out to the UK to build their whole European sector. So that was an exciting part again. So I had to go there, apart from obviously with a good understanding of selling services, software services. It was all about learning about the countries I worked in. So there was the UK. I did some business in France, some in the Netherlands, Belgium. So it was a very good grounding to doing things on my own, because that was one good insight I got there, because typically what happens is when you work in a well-structured establishment like the Tatas, you get guided along and literally rotated across many things, and you get some kind of an overall experience across many aspects. But then you start getting a little bit overconfident, honestly. You think that a lot of it is to do with you, but it is actually the infrastructure that is supporting you at the back end. And that is something I quickly realized. I got this, dissonance as soon as I landed in the UK, in London, that, hey, I'm on my own now. It's literally on my own now. Yes, there was a company to support me, but anything I had to do, I had to think through that myself. And I had to figure out I had to define my own market. Where would it work? And it was actually for a kind of irony, because here was somebody who had just joined a US company, an Indian, right, working in the UK, promoting a US company, and that too not a well-branded or a well-known US company. So that became a huge, awakening for me, So I had to quickly learn what are the areas. Well, fortunately, I mean, you knew the platforms that you worked on. So you had to really figure out, okay, where is this platform dominant in which industries? So that's essentially how I started studying the market and trying to say, okay, if I go to these kinds of companies, I'll have a better chance of success than others, right? So that's essentially how it went by. And I developed a fair amount of business considering all these hurdles that were there. But I wouldn't say it was a very spectacular, performance. I would say it was definitely above average. And given all these different constraints, I feel happy about it. The fact that I learned a lot, that I was actually able to contribute, and I was actually able to create at least something that had, profit in it, right? At the end of the day, it was a profitable venture, And then after that, I handed over and moved on to coming back to the US, worked in this company in the Chicago area, handling the Midwest business. And then I got a call from a former colleague of mine from my first company, Tata's, and it was an entrepreneurial track, right? So it was a case where we had to build things from the ground up, and I just love it. And I kind of feel that at the end of the day, that was defining my DNA. That, hey, this is what you really like to do. This is what you really can do better, right, than anything else. And it was free of a lot of constraints that people would have when they're developing themselves. So that's what I like. And I had this burning desire, which I tested out in the UK when I was in my European stint. It tested out my theory that by that time, okay, so the background is by that time, the software industry in India was getting a lot more serious, let us say, right? Where companies were really looking at building up a capability in India, right? So here I'm talking circa 1992, right? So it was just early years, right? Early years in a way for the software industry in India. It was still less than probably $100 million business overall. So, but most of it was on-site consulting. There was some part of offshoring that started. So that's when I decided, because I tried this out in the UK, is I said, hey, you know what? I should start specializing in promoting building software products in India as opposed to applications, right? So that's when my thought around, I mean, it became a much more popular word later on, but outsourced product development, if you like, and it kind of appealed to my engineering mind. I said, hey, I'm not selling software services, I'm selling software engineering services, right? And I really like to focus on the whole science behind software engineering, right? And say, how can we build good products, right, in India, right? And that journey started in 1995 for me, right? So I took that particular idea, encouraged by this company. But so this company I joined, so this is my company number 3 at that time, right? Employer number 3. Entrepreneurial, we literally had to get the money in to pay for ourselves, right? There was some funding, but a lot of the funding, the charter in that company was to really do 2 things. One is build products for others, but also build our own product, right? At some point in time. Nothing to do with what we were building for others, but build our own and then really morph into a software product company, which relied heavily on a center in India. So these engineering services, therefore, were supposed to or were helping, right, build a product team of our own. We knew how to build it, understand which market were we going after, and actively try to become, successful in that space. So the product team in our company did some really innovative things on the product side of stuff. We started, working on anything that was remote, anything that was wireless, right? So we came up with wireless applications much before the market was ready for it, right? So I think our biggest mistake, if you like, in that case was we were too early in the market. So because we were too early in the market, it was very difficult. The sales cycle was very long. There was a lot of skepticism whether it would even work. So imagine this is before even those Blackberries came out, right? So we did a lot of wireless. We were able to do, send emails out on phones, WAP phones, wireless phones, right? We were able to send attachments in an intelligent manner when the bandwidth was low. So we did a lot of intelligent attachment handling, stuff like that. We were able to send documents. We were able to do things like, validation that a document was fine. Like what is now DocuSign and stuff like that. Be able to do those kinds of technological things to essentially be able to tie up to specific applications. So we wanted to be really the middleware in that space. We're not building like end business applications, but you could consider, okay, email is also an application in a way, but the idea is to power that into application. That was the idea. So that's the way we could become like a infrastructure, in there. Again, 5 years before anything became popular here, right? But unfortunately, that's where a lot of our funding went. We couldn't handle that for a long time. So the services part did well, but the other part, we had to break up and then sell it off. I'll come to that in a minute. But so what I did was I started focusing on software engineering services. So I was on the services side, and we were able to work with small companies. So that's when I started understanding the whole the funding process of software companies. So I chose a bunch of customers. Again, it happened through experiments, right? I didn't have any magical wand or a great brain to do it. Is to really look for some startups on one side, look for some established software companies, and see how could we offer a spectrum of software engineering services. On one side, it could be literally starting up from the beginning, understanding what they want and be able to do the whole, cycle, the SDLC cycle, including business requirements in front. And on the other side, be able to support somebody who already had a product. And that's where you offer that, okay, you're doing all of this here, use the cost arbitrage, of using India and be able to extend the whole, software life cycle for yourself so that you could support your products at a much lower cost, right? So it is a combination of both. So in all of this, one of the big insights was you could not sell these things to product companies by just saying that we can do it cheaper. That would just not work, And that has been my mantra right through. And I've always been saying, cost is always the last reason for, especially for software product companies, right? Sell on other strengths before you sell on that.
Okay.
So cost should become like a natural offshoot, but not the primary reason why somebody would work with you. Because software companies were always, and even now, they are highly selective in terms of who they want to work with, because they want a partner who's really going to first stick their feet into it, number one, and number two, we actually deliver quality. Quality was far more important for software product companies than typically what you find for large corporate applications. Good enough software will work on the latter, but not on the former, right? So that was my primary driving thought all the time in terms of what we did. So fast forward from there on to the next company where, when we split up this particular company into a services part and product and sold the services to another, I got sold, if you like, right? So I naturally got into my next gig where I really took this whole learnings that I had from the past and now started focusing on practices. So that's when I started building practices. So the way we structured our practices was we said, okay, these are the competencies we have in the company. Let's start really creating more shape and definition to it so that you become a specialist in that area, that practice. So software lifecycle services itself became a practice. We had one for geographic information systems where you could use geographical software like ESRI, you must have heard of. That was another specialization we had. Then some packaged products like SAP, I2, and so on. So those are the kinds of practices we built up. So I was in that particular company, we all had this practice theme that I was actively promoting, saying that, look, we'll have different practice heads who will handle these things. I'm not necessarily the expert in everything, but let's hire them and let's build it and go to the market with these being our specific offerings. So we didn't want to go do many other things. So that's when you can say that another insight came in, that if you wanted large scale success, what you should be able to do is define what you're good at and be very clear to say to people that this is not what I do. So the not what I do was very important, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Because you had to build a focus and you had to build a business where there were connections between one practice and the other, so that there is some amount of interplay, but then you don't want it to be so diluted that everybody appears to be an expert on everything, which won't work, right? So you have to essentially be able to define it in that manner so that you really become good at that and you really put your investments in terms of making sure that you get better and better or excel or be with the times on it, if you like, that was the whole idea. So that went for a while. And since I had some connections with my friends in Tata for a long time, so an opportunity came by saying, okay, is there something that we can do which is defining for a company far more than the opportunities I had before? So I could literally come back to the ground up again, and again. So this became a kind of a DNA. Every time I wanted to be in this entrepreneurial mode, I wanted to always do something from scratch. So this presented an opportunity. So my itch to do that, my natural tendency to want to do something like that, presented itself again, right? So it's funny. I mean, a friend of mine remarked a few years back saying, "Shekhar, you never appeared for a formal interview anywhere, have you?" Right? I guess I was never interviewed formally for any of these, except maybe the first one was not an interview, but a test, you can say. It was more of an aptitude test, but I was never really interviewed for a job, So I think part of it had to do with the fact that, your experience spoke for itself. your branding spoke for itself early on. But later on, when I looked into the my European experience, it was no longer that. It wasn't branding. Now I had to build something for myself, a brand for myself, if you like. So this brand carried on into this the latest company that I joined, if you like, the latest and the last company, because now I'm on my way to retiring. But this has been an amazing journey because in this particular company, we started defining it this way. And the company was very successful in terms of being able to do services as such, On the other hand, it did not have a definition on what are you good at or what is it that you offer. So when that came in, so that's when I started defining initially the services so we could at least start getting some business. And then we started defining competencies in this area. So much so that the practice idea also continued here, right? So don't worry, you had to do all of it. You could do all of this in theory, but unless it produces results, you can't continue to sustain that. So the selling aspect was just as important as creating the competency, which means defining what you want to be, as well as being able to execute on that, right? So you have to execute on that mission. So delivery had to be strong. So over time, we built up several practices. I headed a number of practices, gave birth to it, hired people, etc. So in this latest experience, really what became very important was it wasn't just a case of, building competencies or sales or whatever. Now you have to build an organization. So that's where my organizational development capability started, taking better root, right? And that is what was the allure when I joined this company, saying that, okay, I want to join, but I want to be able to direct that as well. That's the kind of experience I want. And the founders in the company were very encouraging in that. And they were really my partners in this whole thing. So we were all operating as equals. So I had a very good say in terms of being able to shape this. And I also saw that the passion among them was just incredible. Very hardworking people came up the same way. And they were very keen on doing something new, encouraging it, and not just dabbling, if you like, that it didn't work, so let's abandon. But in the process of this, one of the learnings also was it actually made me a lot more, practical, though I've always been practical, even more practical. So we tried a lot. So the, try new things, but also fail fast, Make sure you fail fast, So you know what works and what doesn't work for your own unique set of skills and circumstances. So make sure, and if you fail, move on, You got to move on. You can't just stick to one thing and leave it there, right? So that's what we did. So we did a lot of that kind of stuff too. So I did a lot of electronic discovery competencies in the beginning, but I found it wasn't giving us as much as we wanted growth. Then I did something in RFID, which was very unique at that point in time. I'm talking 2004, 2005 timeframe. So I built up a very strong RFID practice where I could work with my prior skills of working with software product companies who used RFID as a baseline for their products. Plus, I was able to morph it to go to customers. And we got some pretty large customers with our own product. So we built our own product. So all those experiences of the past applied here. How to build a product, how to promote a product, how to, sell and create a customer base. So much so that a lot of these large companies are still using our software, to handle some of their logistical issues, So I hired some excellent guys who thought through like that and be able to, create the right product, create the right platform. So we did that. Then our financial practices worked very well. So we built a product even in that space, and that also has been very successful. So I became a product guy as well in a services company. So it's a very unique, I mean, I think it's a very unusual set of experiences, but I'm sure everybody has stories like this to say. But I'm very happy that I was able to challenge myself right all the time, you know. So it
Yeah.
was I had tremendous fun doing all of this, you know.
Yeah,
Sorry for the long explanation. I hope I was coherent.
that is wonderful, Shekhar. And there are a few themes that I thought were running through, so which is
Yes,
what I wanted to understand a little more.
sure, sure.
Say the first time when you moved from the technical contributor role, whether it is individual contributor or you took on leadership roles and all that, into a sales role. Normally,
Yes,
there is, as a technical person, you always hate the salespeople, right?
yes, yes.
So, how did it feel for you? And then how did you reconcile yourself or adjust? And in terms of your, say, working style or the people you deal with and the kind of things that you need to do, were probably very different from what you were doing as a technical contributor. So, how was that
Definitely.
transition for you?
So first of all, I don't consider myself to be a great salesperson. You know, um, I have met people who are far superior in sales. They have the knack, you know, to do that without actually even getting concerned or bothered about anything technical, right? So for me, because I didn't have a sales background, right? But somehow I feel maybe there was a bit of a extrovert in me, but today I consider myself to be an introvert, right?
Mm.
But maybe that extrovert nature helped me ease into it, number one.
Mhm.
Number two, I think the company helped a lot. Tata helped a lot because
Mm.
your early years, you're kind of guided into it. You were never, we were, if you recall, as I told you, the industry was young, number one. And number two, there weren't people coming out of India who were, you know, experts in the software industry as far as selling went. So the company really had to develop that particular skill, selling skill from within. And they did it in a very measured way, if I had to look at it, because it was a joint venture that we worked in. There was a lot of help from the other parent, the American parent.
Okay.
So again, so is that really selling? Probably not, you know, probably less selling. But the key part in that selling was that you had to at least deliver, you know, what you say you were doing from whatever assurances you gave. Hey, you know, I can get these people for you, you know, number one. Number two, I can be a partner of yours and get some of this work done in India, something like that, right? But you have to deliver on those promises. And I think we stumbled a bit in the beginning. I know some stories of the past, but I think overall we succeeded. And that became a good springboard for the company to do a lot more later. So to that extent, you were eased into the job. So that was you were kind of an apprentice, you know, and that apprentice track helped you generate some confidence. But the biggest pain, as I told you, or the dissonance, the cognitive dissonance that occurred was when I left Tata's and joined this other company. And now I realized I had nothing. I mean, I still have these fondly kept. I used to create my own brochures. And I still did. I mean, I did that forever, literally. That became another skill where I didn't rely on literally on anybody to build any of this. You know, with the smattering of English competency and the way to, you know, present things, etc., I was able to write up a lot of these brochures myself. The brochures could be purely in defining services or defining what we did in a project, you know, not making it too technical, but providing a flavor of both business and technical. And the background that I came with also helped because I didn't need help in understanding what is it that was written because I wrote it. I wrote it because I knew what it was and I could talk about it. So I think all the technical strength finally helped in selling too. Because I found a lot of my customers also said, hey, You seem to know a lot about things, right? And that helped because that gave them the confidence that, hey, here's a guy who's talking, and I know when he's saying this, he's literally behind it, that he can actually make this happen.
Mhm.
And that's how selling really happened. So I stuck to my game, right? I stuck to my skills and said, hey, I know how to deliver this, so I'll sell what I can deliver, right?
Mhm.
And that essentially will establish the reputation. And I think probably in hindsight, that's what made offshore also succeed for India,
Mhm.
because the people who were selling were people who had done some work in that area. These are not just, what shall I say? Sorry, I don't want to sound insulting to anybody, but these are not generic salespeople, right?
Mhm.
But then the insight that I got over time was this will not do. You need to hire people who could connect very well, much better with customers. So that's when I started appreciating and respecting salespeople. And when I started interacting and building my own sales teams, I had to know where to stop, you know,
Mhm.
meaning don't tell them too much about things that they really don't want to know.
Mhm.
Teach them to go get those opportunities, teach them to go more than even developing opportunities, just develop those relationships. Because then I had other people who could then go unearth those opportunities, give shape
Mhm.
to it,
Yeah.
and that way win. So those are all insights that came along the way.
Yeah, very nice. I think there's a very good way of sharing how you were able to scale rather than
Yes,
just
yes,
doing as one person. Yeah, that's very nice.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that became an adage in the company later on because in my latest stint and my last stint, if you like, is when I used to interview people, they would ask, so what are my promotion aspects, right? How would I grow in this company? And I said, look, this is a company that literally started right from the ground, right? So you're joining a company that's growing all the time. So your growth comes when you only build things beneath you, not
Mhm.
you climbing up something. It'll never work.
Mhm.
And that kind of a message struck very well in the people who started working with me because then they knew that this is not a question of me taking a job and then getting promoted up the ladder. There's no ladder. You're building a ladder under you. It's like that.
Yeah.
So that's how we started growing, and that's what has made this company quite successful.
Mhm.
Uh, just I'm very proud of the fact that is a company that's completely self-funded. There is no debt, and it's grown to the level it has just purely through the internal efforts, no acquisitions, nothing.
Mhm.
It's all been done through the hard work of everybody around me. So that's what has been great about it.
Yeah. So on a slightly related thing, probably moving into more of the business management or creating an organization and so on.
Yes.
The question that I had was about a product of India, which was essentially the technical skills and the people. And you've been associated with the industry right from its probably the birth or the infancy time.
Yes.
Uh, while that has still kind of endured, and you still have that cost arbitrage that you're talking about, and there are people who are able to provide services.
Yes.
Well, that has been fairly successful, and your experience with product engineering and working with distributed teams, which probably contributed to the product development.
Yes.
How do you see the products coming from India? I mean, the reason I'm asking is that, yeah, compared to when we started, when this whole product idea was a dream or some kind of a romantic venture, now you have a lot of startups which are solving problems in the local context
Right.
in India. Okay. But to be able to do something similar across the globe, to have an international impact from what you have seen happening elsewhere and what you have built, whether it is the practices or the capabilities or working with the product engineering and all that, what do you think either these teams or broadly we are missing?
It's a hard question to answer because it's highly contextual, right? It depends on what is it that you're offering. One of the things, of course, is what is very important is when you're building a product, you can't just think that I built a technically, good product or an excellent product, right? That itself doesn't help sell, So this is one of the things that came on later in the later years in my last stint also is that look, while we built good products, etc., what becomes important is, especially for product companies, marketing is very, very important. And when I say marketing, marketing is not sales, right? So what I mean by marketing is really you have to look at many aspects. One aspect, of course, is you have to build alliances, right? And alliances is what is really going to bring in that multiplier effect to it, right? And that itself is a very tricky, it's a very tricky skill set, subject to handle, because you want to be careful that it becomes a partnership of equals, right? So otherwise you could find that you could be spinning a lot of wheels and not getting enough success, or you could be seen as somebody who's not really supporting the cause of the other, the cause of the partner, right? So you have to be able to do a partnership of equals. So that's one area which is hard, very hard. I mean, I've tried that in this last stint as well. Tried to do it in many ways. So let me explain some examples, right? Give you some examples to explain that. Number one, we specialize in an area, like the RFID example is one, is we specialized in an area. We said we'll be your engineering partner, right?
Okay.
Right? So we can be your engineering partner. So that's one method. You do whatever you need to do in terms of defining what you want, defining the features of this product. You market, you sell, right? But rely on us to be able to deliver product. That's a standard baseline method, right? Number one. The second method was, okay, I know that intellectual property concerns are there. You hold on to the absolute core, whatever is your intellectual property. We'll give you very strong contractual assurances. And in some cases, if we had to give non-competes, we did that too, right? Non-competes in an area or non-competes in not working with your competitors, and you define that list every year like that. So you be the core engineer, and we'll be your ancillary engineer, right? Meaning anything that's not in the core, we will handle that, correct? So that, again, playing to your strengths, right? That is the second part, or the second method, if you like. The third method was really to leave the whole engineering as a separate team, isolate that from a professional services team. Because a lot of product companies in this country, right, essentially are focused on selling the product, and they really want good professional service providers, those who could work with their professional services in defining and designing and delivering things that are specific to a customer, right? So that has good synergies for a vendor company, okay, that can essentially want to work with that customer in other areas too. So it becomes a natural extension to your skills, because this product company is not interested in those parts, They want to make sure that you do it in a non-disruptive way, It should not cause any problems for them, You shouldn't go and actively promote some other product, for example, which competes with them, right? So you have to demonstrate fealty there, So that's the whole thing. That is another method. So the The other methods now get into that whole marketing part, where you take on specific targets yourself. So now you're putting a sales team together, a marketing team not a marketing, but a sales team together to do that. Correct? So that again, you have to be careful, because then you now have to start allocating not your core skills, but other skills, right? To now be able to generate, success there, which makes you a reliable partner. So again, these are all cases or examples of where you're supporting a customer on their product. So now literally you have to reverse that when you're doing it where you have a product, correct? So first of all, if you have a product, you have to be able to demonstrate that it works in that partner space, correct? Which I know we have done it even in the Tata space. You yourself handled one, is to show that it works on their platform, it works in their markets. But then you have to provide very strong support to that, because then they expect you to be the company with the product. And now you have to provide every bit of help needed. The help could be in terms of selling, the help could be in terms of marketing, meaning participating in trade shows and building up other alliances, pricing, promotion, how do you do promotion of those kinds of things, etc. So those become very important for somebody to be successful, right?
Yeah.
Now, if you want to start providing, if you want to get to the next level there, then you need to be able to provide maybe like API support, correct? For somebody else to build on top of it. So if you want to create a marketplace, you really have to get to those kinds of things, so that others can now rely on your baseline and build on top of it and make a business for themselves. So it kind of literally flips itself, right? And that, I think, is a challenge, right? That is always a challenge, because it's a question of funding. It's a question of, where your focus is going to be. So that's where you have to carefully think through and say, what is it that I want to do, and be able to do it. There's a lot of dabbling we have all done, you have done, I have done. And there are a lot of companies who think I can go up to this point and be successful. It becomes difficult after some time. It just doesn't work that way, That's what it is. Does it make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. This is each one, what one has learned the hard way is what we are trying to capture. Because somebody might be able to relate to it. I could definitely relate it to a few things.
Exactly.
I didn't realize how much time we've been talking.
Yes.
I do have a lot more questions, but probably for a later time. But one thing which I normally would like to get from the guests is very broadly what you may call as career advice.
Right.
So I would ask for tips for two segments of people. One is the entry level and those who are facing a midlife crisis, so to say. But then in your case, I'm going to ask it a little differently, not talking about the entry level people. Since you have been able to move from different roles or taking on different magnitudes of challenges. And like you said, then after some time, that is what you like to do, right?
Yes.
So for people who are either not very happy with what they are doing, or they think that they need to do something more exciting, how can they do, and can they still do it within the IT, whether it is from technical to a non-technical role or the other way, whichever way. And the second segment, which is also partly, you can say my own question also, is what about the late career people? I mean, I can't imagine, and knowing how active you are and how actively you maintain your networks, your the partnerships and things I could relate to. What after retirement? Right? I'm sure I can't see Shekhar retired.
Well, everybody says so, but at this point in time, in the last 3 months, I literally have been doing more of my own personal, catch up on all the things that I wanted to. But I'm also itching to do something different, something different, right?
Yeah.
So to handle the, I'm sorry?
Yeah, what would be your tips for these two segments?
Right. So the first one, if I hear, is somebody who's in a kind of a midlife crisis, right? Right. Nothing is too late. You first have to figure out your own strengths, right? The way you have to figure that out, I would say, is, I mean, everybody innately knows what their strengths are. So face up to what you're good at and what you're not. You must clearly define that, and be careful that you define it in a very honest way, to yourself, number one. And then talk to your network, your close friends, etc. Ask them to do a brutal assessment of you, because ultimately, when you're promoting yourself, somebody has to buy from you. What I mean by buy is not buy with money, but buy the idea, buy whatever it is, that buy your passion, if you like, package your passion, correct? So I think between those two techniques, one is a self-assessment and the other one through some people who can give you a brutal assessment of yourself, what you'll then start understanding about yourself is your own innate strength and the perception of others. Actually, we have a very good, just to divert a bit, we actually do a particular assessment. I mean, people take this test, okay? And I'll send you a couple of samples, I think I'm interested in sharing that kind of stuff. And this particular test is astonishing, because I was amazed on what it could tell you, right, about yourself, right? And we do that as a part of our interviewing process, where the person is taking this online test, and the test is very simple. One is, it says choose, it gives you a bunch of words, and it says choose what you think closely relates to you. And the other one is choose those what somebody else thinks about you, how others perceive you. So between these two, it comes back and churns out a report on you across 10 different dimensions.
Oh.
Okay. And dimensions are things like your ability to sell, ability to articulate, what motivates you, will you, this is for the employer. Will this person stay with you, stick, things like that. I'll share that with you. You should see it. It's really very nice. And it's pretty accurate, right? So what I did was I devised a method on top of it. Okay. Because no test is going to be 100% accurate. But I collected the results of all the past interviews that we had done. And we typically do this for salespeople, for managers, etc. And I put it all together in a tabular manner. Then I went and I interviewed my colleagues, the founders of the company, and said, okay, some of them we hired, some of them we did not. So those people we hired, we said, okay, now that you've worked with this person for X number of years, would you hire him now? Right? Yeah. Given that now you really know his skills, right? It's no longer, what the test said. Would you hire him now? So I asked them to rate it. I didn't tell them, what I was doing with it. I just said, just rate it and tell me. Yeah. Then I correlated their decisions on whether they want to keep or not, or they never should have hired this person, whatever. And then I compared it against test results. You know what the correlation was? 90%. Wow. There was a 90% correlation between who they wanted to keep and what kinds of scores came out. So that was a tremendous insight. Then I showed it to them. I said, look, this is what it is. Yeah. So I was trying to, in a very, light manner, saying that, hey, the test is giving you 90% accuracy. Why do you waste your time doing more interviewing? This test, if a test is 90% reliable, that's it. You go with it, right? But that's, anyway. So to come back to the point, therefore, for somebody who's in this midlife crisis should do this kind of an assessment, I feel. From there, you will get that exercise itself will tell you what should you pursue, in terms of what is available in the software industry. Now there's so many different, career lines available, right? So for us, it was probably limited in the sense what you could do. And we would always struggle, right? Do I want to stay technical? Do I want to get into other areas? But now, of course, there are so many different avenues available, right? and so many new jobs that come out, you can start defining, therefore, your purpose or your goal. What should you do next? And then seek out those kinds of roles, either if it's available in the company or in some other in the industry. When you interview, say, this is what I want to do. In fact, that essentially what probably attracted my colleagues here to hire me, because I said, I don't want to do this, I want to do this. And that's how and luckily the timing was right. And they said, okay, if this is what you want to do, yes, we'll promote you for this part. You handle this part, right? So that, I think, would give you a bit of a guide. But I think I never was interested in just making money, because that's just one big thing that everybody has, right? That wasn't my interest. I said, look, I want to be able to develop myself. That was the most important thing, right? And again, people may have monetary goals, which is fine too. If they are, then you should choose those things that give you more money than not, right? But if it isn't that, then you should look for satisfaction this way. Are you a creator? Are you a sustainer, right? You like to sustain and grow things? Because people who do scaling of stuff, right, have a different skill set too, So that's essentially how it is, yeah? So it's a combination of your own innate strengths, where you want to go, and what kind of opportunities present themselves. So it's very vague, I think, in what I said, but those are really some guideposts, Yeah.
Wonderful. And the late career people?
So to just to add a little bit to this, what happens is, I have been advising some others in this area too, So they say, can you interview this person and tell me what are his strengths and what do you think he can actually develop himself into? So I've done that too. I've done that for a couple of my friends, informal basis, is to say, hey, if this is somebody you want to hire, this is the kind of role that's good. And hearing what this person wants to do, I see that there is passion here, because ultimately that's what's going to drive you. What you want to do is going to drive you no matter what, I find that's one thing. To answer your question on what is it for others, right, is find out what can you package in a bottle, right? Among all the things you have, find out what you can package in a bottle and test those out and tell people, this is what I'm good at, right? It's not like we are all not good at many things, right? And generally we can literally handle anything, but in the software industry, that is, but try to bring out some specific things, And the specific things could be your knowledge on, for example, product management could be one, correct? Or your knowledge on, helping, as I was saying, helping, selecting mid managers in a company, correct? Or helping provide support to somebody who is, in my case, building a practice. What are the things you should look at? So for all of these kinds of things, I gave are all examples of my own. I have created templates, right? To essentially handle this, right? So, and I have tested these templates with others, like when somebody joined, I would say, hey, this is how I'm thinking about this. What do you think? And they say, hey, right on. I mean, you're thinking like what big companies do, It's just that we don't have the same scale or the same opportunities, but this is exactly how people think, right? So much so that we went about creating a whole structure around how to evaluate people, when we are interviewing people, middle managers, or even, people with specialists in a particular area, things like that, how to build a practice, right? So if you had those kinds of things in place, right, that will help somebody understand that, okay, you can do that. And of course, you will learn along the way, Once you get engaged, you will learn and see, are you really, you think you're good at that, are you really good at that, Right? And that's how you will start honing yourself. So there's
Mm.
a lot of joy for people who have retired or about to retire too, essentially. One of the things I do apart from all of this is I constantly watch different kinds of television programs.
Mm.
And I watch it not just for the enjoyment of it, but also get behind and understand the mind of the person who developed it. So, and I have, I'm just blown away with the kind of creativity that I'm sure it's there in Hindi cinema also these days, but in English cinema is just unbelievable. The amount of stuff. I'm probably one of those guys who will go watch the specials.
Okay.
I don't watch the movie alone. I watch
Yeah.
the specials. I watch all the specials and
Uh-huh.
understand how things were done, how they have been
Mm.
done. Right?
Mm. Mm.
And then I have my own circle of friends who are aficionados of that kind, right? And I discuss it with them, So there are a number of those kinds of movies where you go look at the technical aspects of it and learn, hey, how did he do that? How did he do this, right? So it's not the storyline or the entertainment part, but the behind it, what's happening, I
Yeah.
love to do because that kind of extends my mind,
Mm.
That's how I learn. So that would be again another probably an advice I could give to people who are thinking or trying to define the third box of their life, right? So
Yeah, wonderful. I think, this gives me a couple more ideas we'll discuss later. But thanks a lot,
sure,
Sheikh, for taking the time, that too so
you're
early in the
welcome.
morning for you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. It was wonderful talking to you. Definitely. Yes.
We thank Siddharth for the music and Anita for promoting the Software People stories.
If you like this episode,
Please subscribe on your favorite podcast client.
And spread the word in your network.
if you'd like to share your story,
Contact us at podcasts@pm-powerconsulting.com.